Hello everyone and welcome to the shop. For today's video, I'm going to show you how to tile a wall step by step. So for this project, I'm going to be tiling over a vanity. But the installation techniques that I'm going to teach you today will carry over to any tile installation that you need to do on a wall so long as you're not tiling in a wet area. So whether you're tiling a backsplash, a feature wall, or above a vanity in a bathroom like we are here, you might have a few obstacles to contend with before getting started, such as your plumbing fixtures, any wall fixtures, electrical outlets, or lighting that might be in the way. You want to first remove these, but if you feel uncomfortable removing plumbing or electrical, make sure that you hire a licensed contractor to do so before getting started. So since tiling can be a pretty messy job, if you have any countertop space or any finished flooring in the area, you definitely want to cover it up. So we're going to go ahead, cover up our countertop over here so that it doesn't get dirty or scratched. And then we're also going to cover up our flooring with a tarp. We will be laying flooring later on down the line, so we have unfinished floors here right now. You can go ahead and just lay a tarp down. It will just make your life easier on the back end. So the first step in your tiling process is always tile prep. For tiling a wall that is not in a wet area, it is perfectly okay to tile straight to your drywall with a few rules. If your walls are currently painted, you're going to want to go around and check for any loose or flaking paint, as this can cause your tile installation to fail and lose bond over time. So if you do have any loose or flaking paint, you're going to want to go around with a paint scraper and scrape those away first. Next, you're going to want to wipe down the wall with a damp sponge to get rid of any bond breakers like dirt, dust, and debris. So the next step in the tiling process is to plan our tile layout. First, you need to decide on a tile spacer size. Some manufacturers will specify the best spacer size for their tile. Ours doesn't, so we're going to go with a 1/16 spacer for this project. Next, find the center point of the wall or focal point you are tiling around. In our case, since we're tiling over a vanity, we're going to use the center of the vanity as our center point and make our reference mark. Typically, for any wall you tile, this will be the default way to achieve a symmetrical tile layout. You can shift your pattern left or right to avoid any small cuts that you don't want on either side. For the vertical layout, if tiling around a vanity or countertop and to the floor, you will measure the length of the top of the vanity to the floor or baseboard that you're tiling to. Then you divide that by the height of your tile plus a spacer size to get a full tile running across the countertop area with the cut running along the floor or the baseboard. This next step is optional, but if you have a space where your tile extends past your countertops or between two countertop spaces where a dishwasher or a stove would go, for example, a ledger board will ensure you get the layout you desire, which is full tiles running across the counters. We're going to be using some scrap 1x2 pieces of wood pre-cut to the size we need for our project. We will then find the studs in the wall and secure the ledger board level with the countertops secured to the studs. So before we mix up our thin set and get to tiling, we need to select our trowel size. I'm going to be installing this 3x10 subway tile, and I'm installing it in a dry area. So in a dry area, what we're looking for is at least 80% thin set coverage behind our tile. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start off with this smaller trowel, which is a 1/4 by 3/16 V-notch trowel. I'm going to apply the thin set to the wall, apply my tile, pull it off, check the coverage on the back, and if it's not quite 80%, I'm going to move up to the next trowel size here, which is a 1/4 by 1/4 square notch trowel, which will apply more thin set to the wall. So you can take this theory and apply it to your project and just go with the rule of thumb that the bigger the tile, the bigger the trowel size. So now that we're prepped and ready to set tile, the last thing we need to do is mix up our Thinset mortar. First, add the proper amount of water specified by the instructions on the back of the bag for the Thinset mortar you're going to be using for your project. Next, add the powder and mix it up using a high-speed drill. Make sure to pay attention to the instructions on your specific bag because some Thinset mortars require a slaking period after your initial mix. Once you're done mixing, you can double check the consistency with your margin trowel. It should be a creamy consistency that's not too runny but not too thick and free of clumps and dry powder. To check for proper consistency, see if it falls off your trowel or sticks. All right, so now that our thin set is all mixed up, we're ready to set some tile. The first thing we're going to go over is properly applying the thin set to the wall to get the best coverage possible. Using your bucket scoop or margin trowel, place a good amount of thin set onto the flat side of your trowel. Next, you will be applying the thin set to the wall with the flat side of the trowel called burning in the thin set. This promotes better coverage behind your tile installation to help you achieve that 80% coverage I talked about earlier. Next, you will add a bit more thin set, only this time you will be using the notch side of your trowel, raking your notches in all the same direction. Ideally, the direction of your notches should be going in the shortest distance of your tile. For us, this would be vertical. Burn in the thinset to each tile before setting using the flat side of your trowel or your margin trowel. Place each tile and collapse the ridges by moving the tile gently in the opposite direction of your trowel lines. This helps collapse the ridges, lets air escape, and gives you optimal bond between your tile and the wall. After setting your first tile, it is best to gently pull off your tile using a margin trowel to check the amount of coverage that is appropriate before moving on to the next row of tile. If you find you are not getting at least 80% coverage behind your tile, like the example here, where you still see trowel lines in areas where the tile did not embed in the thinset, you can go ahead and use the next size notch trowel to remedy the issue. After placing your very first row of tile, be sure to add your spacers where tile meets any adjacent hard surfaces to allow room for expansion later. So one important thing you're going to want to do before going on to your second row of tile is check across the top of all of your tiles on the first row with a level. Next, you want to go ahead and double check all of the vertical intersecting grout joints where all the tiles meet. We want to go ahead and just double check that all of our tiles are remaining flush with one another, and if not, we're going to add a wedge spacer underneath and just making sure that everything is remaining flush before moving on to our next row. Tiling can get messy quick, so I always suggest you try to clean your tiles and grout joints as you go periodically to help with cleanup later. The longer you leave the thinset to cure, the harder it is to remove from the tile. Keep your grout brush, pick, and some clean damp sponges nearby to clean up any mess you make along the way. It is okay to temporarily remove your spacers to clean the surface of your tile and between grout joints as needed. Just be sure to replace these as soon as possible before continuing tiling. So at some point in your tiling journey, you're going to need to cut some tile. Since my tile is a ceramic tile, I'm making most of my cuts on a snap cutter. Additionally, if you need to make harder cuts like around electrical outlets or boxes where light fixtures are going to go, you can also use a tile saw or an angle grinder. Additionally, if you have any protrusions sticking out of your wall, such as plumbing, you can use a diamond hole saw bit attached to a drill to make those cuts. If you want a more in-depth tutorial on how to cut tile, check out the video linked below. So now that our wall is tiled from the ledger board to the ceiling, we're going to let the thinset cure overnight before coming back to remove our ledger board and continue tiling to the floor. So once we remove the ledger board, we're going to clean the underside of the tile to get it free of any caked up thinset that might be there. Next, I'm going to measure the vertical space to get the cut needed at the floor to meet up to the rest of our tile installation above. So depending on your specific project, you might have an area of tile that has exposed tile edges like we have here. One side of our project goes up to an inside corner, but the other side, we had to install a profile here. Now there's multiple ways that you can finish your tile edge. We've chosen to go ahead and add this metal profile. And basically it creates a termination point to finish off our tile project nice and neat instead of showing a raw tile edge. For more information on how to finish your tile edges, you can refer to the video linked below. So once you've completed tiling, it's now time to begin the cleaning process before grout. So if you've tiled all in one day, you want to allow the installation to dry at least overnight before coming back to remove your spacers and begin cleaning. Start by removing your spacers and then use a plastic scraper tool to remove any large chunks of thinset. Use water and a green 3M scrub pad to remove any harder to clean thinset residue from the face of the tile and in the grout joints. You can then go over the inside of your grout joints with a grout brush or toothbrush and water to ensure they are clean and ready to accept grout. You can wipe your tile down with a wet sponge and dry it with a microfiber rag to remove any thinset haze. Okay, so we're all set to grout. We're using a bag mix grout that you have to mix with water. Just double check with the instructions on the back of the bag for the grout that you are using for the proper water to powder mix ratio to get the right consistency. Use your margin trowel to add the grout to your float and apply to the walls. Use the short side of the grout float at a shallow angle to pack the grout firmly into the joints. You can go back and use the long side of the float to really fill up the joints. Using the long side of the grout float at a steep angle, you can then wipe away the excess grout off the surface of the tile. Make sure you do not fill corners or countertop joints with grout. We need to leave this area clear for expansion and we'll fill this with silicone later. Now that your walls are grouted, you need to let the grout dry for the specified time allotted by the grout of your choice. You can check if the grout is dry by touching with your finger. Once the grout is dry, use a clean damp sponge in circular motions to clean the surface of your tile, flipping your sponge and rinsing in clean water periodically. Once your initial clean is complete, your tile surface will end up looking like this with a film on the surface. Now we will begin our final clean. Begin your final clean by using a damp sponge to start cleaning the surface of your tile. Follow up each clean section with a dry microfiber towel. Repeat until all walls are complete. Once all the walls are complete and dry, you should be able to see all the grout haze has been removed. If you have stubborn grout haze, you can follow up with a grout haze remover. So the final step in tiling a wall is to silicone your changes of planes to allow for expansion in your tile installation. These are going to be areas such as where the tile meets up to your countertops, any inside corners, or wherever the tile meets up to other hard surface materials. To get started, first lay a generous bead of silicone in the corner you are caulking. Next, you can spray your ammonia-free glass cleaner on the bead. This helps to stop the silicone from sticking to the surfaces around the area you're working in. Your last step is to use a caulking tool to press the silicone into your joint and slowly remove any excess, being sure to wipe the tool often to avoid the silicone from spilling over to surrounding surfaces. All right, everyone, so there you have it. For today's video, I showed you how to tile a wall step by step. We started off with just painted drywall, and now we have an awesome feature wall behind our vanity to tie into the rest of our bathroom. The techniques you learned here today can help you with almost any tiling project. Stay tuned for more videos, and I'll see you on the next one.